Welcome on a Friday morning. This is episode 18 of MX Unfiltered. And yes, I am never punctual. Man, if you could hear my wife, if you're not 15 minutes early, you are freaking late. And I am always late, it seems like. But I've got a good panel. As always, we've got Coach Rob with us, and we've got Ronnie Mac's big brother, where he learned literally everything from him and how actually his brother ended up being a professional. Was you learn from your older brother. And so we've got Greg with us as well. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Awesome.
It's awesome to have you.
Dun, dun, dun. Hey, look, my face is all off from here. We're going to maybe change these up just a bit. So, Greg, tell us just a little bit about yourself. I know you're a motocross coach, and you just in the backstage we were talking about, you rented out Freestone in Oak Hill. So just 30 seconds of
I'll make it quick. So did the pro thing forever with my brother working for Trey Kennard, and then I transitioned to the training facility thing. I'd seen it a bunch, so I started game moto, and then first few years it was just me leasing properties and stuff, and we brought and we closed on a property in 2021. So we have 50 acres out there, and we have a full-blown training facility where we work with over the last 4 or 5 years the fastest amateurs in the country.
Wow. So, dude, that game is an incredibly difficult thing to do because you got to have quite a bit of money, and there's lots of upkeep with stuff. What originally really wanted you to start that up? You're like, hey, now that I'm my brother's not racing professional anymore, there's something I want to do to kind of give back. I mean, how is it that started with you?
So for me, like I was telling you guys earlier, I never wanted to be a mechanic. It was happenstance to get to the next step with my brother. Loved racing, wanted to see him succeed, and just fill in the pieces. So traveling the country. We left early on in a motorhome. I think I just graduated high school, and I he's actually my younger brother, so he didn't have my parents made modest money, not a lot. So I hit the road, and we hit the road basically for when I turned 18 for about 2.5 years, just living in a motorhome until he got his basically his factory Honda ride. And then at that point, we'd ran into Trey Kennard, and he hired me immediately to run his practice program. So running a practice program for a pro when they own their own track and facility, it's identical to running a training facility, because you work, the only difference is I don't have to work on dirt bikes anymore. I just work on a lot more bulldozers and tractors.
Awesome. I find it interesting that it's funny how life just happens, and things that you might not have saw yourself doing, but just it ends up somewhat falling in your lap. I mean, I say that with a grain of salt because you need to have expertise to do what you do, but without all the information that you got with running a facility with Trey Kennard, it might not have made it as easy of like, hey, I can do this. I can do it full blown by myself with multiple people because of the experience that you had with Trey, correct?
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, I was telling Rob earlier, I'd learned to run equipment from guys like Randy Poulter and Dream Tracks, because Trey's making really good money, right? So he's bringing in the best of the best. He's working with the best physical coaches. He's paying big money for that. So I'm around all that, riding coaches, what may be, and I'm just seeing this program, and I'm going, well, you know what? I can put this together. And I guess my biggest struggle when I started this is I wasn't a professional racer, but since I was 16, I never had another job. It was going professional racing with in so many different roles, from just a big brother to a mechanic to a practice bike guy working under factory Honda. And at the races, I was a film guy for Kennard. So instead of just the filmer had to split time between the two riders, so I would come with our own video. So we would run video, dartfish, whatever it may be. So I learned at the highest level from the technical side. So I guess my biggest struggle when I got into this was going, well, I haven't raced Supercross. That was never me. But I looked at my competition in this sport, and I mean, frankly, it is a lot of it. Without sounding bad, it's a lot of people that were failed motocrossers that never got to the factory level. You know what I mean? That never saw it and that never went racing. And at the highest level, right? So I've got amateurs now, and that's we were known, my brother was known as the best privateer. You know what I mean? I look back thinking, well, this is just how things run. But we always ran like a pro program. There was a reason he would earn a ride one year and then lose his ride because we would go to a team. Man, but like Butler Brothers, right? Where they got the semi and it looks good, and you're just like, holy shit, this is just a fucking big box with, it's a show. It's a show. It's not what it was. So his results would be worse, and we would go put together this program, and on our own dime, and he would earn the ride back. We'd be back in the top 10, and then he would sign, for whatever 60, 80 grand for one of these other teams, and it's just like it was embarrassing, to see like what, especially because I at that point I'd been working for Kennard, so I knew what it looked at the top end. So I just want to provide that kind of service. It's all about crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and making sure that you're picking up all the low hanging fruit. So I'm really trying to help amateurs do that. Do the simple stuff, and then with game, the goal is, all these trainers can get these kids, for me, 95% of the way there, 97% of the way there. I'm really trying with our business to push those kids. You can tell by our clientele that extra 2%, because the whole balls of the feet, elbows up. Everybody's. I'm not seeing any kids anymore that aren't coming to me like that. That was the biggest thing 10 years ago, to get kids like that. They're already coming dialed. So it's trying to make sure they're getting all that low hanging fruit, and then finding the extra to get them to the next step. So that's kind of our mission statement here at Game.
Awesome. Because, I know Coach, when Coach Rob, he deals with a lot of guys that end up just being overworked, and he honestly tells them, hey, we need to work less, but we need to focus in on certain things, and that's when real success happens. And Greg, it's interesting that you say about the Butler brothers and some of the other teams, where it's interesting how the 1% of the 1% is really the ones that are making up 99% of all the money. And it's a bummer. And when I talk to privateers like Kevin Moran's and Tristan Lane, all these guys that have got pretty good programs going, it's because they built it on their own, and they've got a bunch of outside sponsors that are helping them. It's not necessarily the series that is paying them. And I had a long conversation with Davey Coombs, and he talked about, like, that's part of the reason why they have the homologation rule, and they're talking a bunch with Supercross to enable the privateers to basically monetize themselves on the internet so that they can make a good portion, because we talked quite a bit about some of the factory guys and how much money that they make, not from the series, but it's all from, donut sales and VIP stuff and other outside sponsors that are really fitting the bill. So I don't know. It's such an interesting sport, because for us, it's huge. But if you look it out compared to anything else, it's not much bigger than curling or bowling, which is also somewhat of a bummer. But it's way more dangerous, but way more cool. And we're all somewhat psychopaths because we love it so much.
That's it. Well, Johnny, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but Derek Harris and I have actually started a new podcast series called Navigating Amateur Motocross, for this exact reason, because, there's just there's so many things that are misrepresented, I think is the best way to say in it. And, when you step back out and you look at the big picture, it's like, all right, how do you get started? And then if you think you've got what it takes, where do you go? Is it a facility route? Is it a non-facility route? Every rider's different. Every family's different. What makes them tick and get the success, and what doesn't? It's no different than any other business, where you've got people who have certain strengths and certain weaknesses, and hopefully you put all those together. That's what Derek and I are going to do on this podcast series. You guys can find it over on our YouTube channel. First episode drops today, and it's just, we're going to be taking a various topic every single week. We're actually going to be interviewing some ex-moto parents whose kids have made it to the top, and what would they do differently. And we've got a really cool platform. But bringing the conversation full circle, though, Johnny, and what you're saying, is there a right or a wrong way to develop a rider? I mean, we've seen it so many different paths that have been chosen, either by circumstances or by just outright desire. So I don't know. I got a lot of heat when I mentioned it on Jace's podcast with Gypsy Tales. You've got, the Villapotos of the world that trained by themselves, the the big three that I obviously mentioned in the show was James, Ricky, and Chad. But you could throw in there Villapoto, and Dunge did a lot of training by himself as well. So it's interesting if people say it's only one way. And Greg, I'm sure you see and hear it all the time. I always refer to Johnny is the flavor of the month. You know, if somebody goes and gets a championship or two, now that facility has the magic elixir, and then they go running out to you and they want you to fix something when it's pretty much unfixable because you have a helicopter parent that won't let you do your job, you know? So it becomes a vicious combination for sure.
That sounds like the Baker Factory effect.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, so this is where I'm at. And Rob, I mean, we're really in the same, lane as far as clientele as I probably am right now. And man, for me, I don't know how to say this in a good way, but like the facility thing it's a broken system. Okay.
Yeah.
What is right? And I tell my people, I use the facility term loosely with me. If you come in here, I got a porta potty. I don't have buildings. I don't have a gym. We can go to the fucking gym and pay a $10 membership or $20 membership. So you get all this overhead. And then what do you do as a business? What's best for the result is very rarely best for the pocketbook. So for me to go and take these trips down to Oak Hill and Freestone this week, it was extremely, if my overhead, you cannot do that. And then also these facilities run like fucking Walmart. They go they Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday. We never rode 4 or 5 days in a row. So on my schedule, we never ride more than 3 days in a row with our schedule here. So we don't work like a training facility, and I'll tell you why right now. And this is my look on it. I do want to work with the kids on the top end. I want to see that happen. And the biggest thing for me is there's never been a champion that was a product of a training facility. We've been in this shit for what, 02, 03, MTF, GPF popped up. And Justin Barsha is the most successful racer from a training facility, followed by Joey Savacci. And we're 23 years into this thing. So to never have a 450 champion, I think that says something. So I have to make moves, and I know, I think Rob, I think me and you think a lot the same. I've listened to some stuff you've said, on not all your platforms, but that's my thinking. And there's certain programs like I got a Beckham Smith, this kid Beckham Smith. He's here full time with me. I run everything. Mom and dad are better than they're just like a factory race team. If the kid needs it, they're on it. And then I also have guys that pop in here and there. Grayson Townsend, the Landon Gordons come in, and I ask them, okay, how do I fit in your program, right? Because I'm not here to say I'm the guy. So for certain guys, I am the guy. I'm the end all be all. You give me your whole, you're hiring me for the entire year or 2 years or a long-term plan. But the guys that pop in and out, and we do. So how can I fit into your program? The fast guys, and because we can provide a pretty gnarly with our track prep expertise and what we can offer on the track. We can offer a lot there, and I think that's where the most important part of the facility is to find a condition that you can train on that's the most similar to racing. And I think that's the biggest benefit most of the time to owning a training facility.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Greg, you probably feel the same way. I'm always astounded when I look at the heart rate data and I look at the cumulative hours that these riders are putting on themselves 4 or 5 consecutive days a week. And they wonder why the attrition and burnout rate is as high as it is. It's like, people always, I won't say they laugh, but I don't believe that they trust when I say to them, the pros don't ride 5 days a week and put 7 hours on the motorcycle. It's it's an amazing mindset. And I guess the part that is ironic, I don't know if that's the right adjective for it or not, but these are people who are supposedly ex-pros that are now running facilities that are running the kids into the ground, doing things that they never did, and then somehow justifying it because you're at a facility. It's a vicious cycle that I just sit back and I go, if you looked at the way that professional runners and professional cyclists train, and then you look at the way that the facilities are being run, I don't understand where the mindset's coming from. It's that old joke, hey, why are we doing this? They come up to someone like yourself as a riding coach. Hey, why are we doing this? I don't know. I did it when I was a pro. My riding coach had me doing it. So we're just going to keep doing it instead of like what you're doing, articulating why we're doing it. How does it fit in? What is the end goal? How do we measure it? Hey, check it out. You got better. What a novel idea.
Yeah.
That's the part that tends to get lost in, well, you don't know that I'm Joe Blow. I'm ex-pro. Don't argue with me. Well, if you can't ask your riding coach a question as to why you're doing what you're doing and get a legitimate answer other than because I said so, like you said, you've been there and done that. And the fact
Yeah.
that you're willing to elaborate on it, not just do it because I said so, understand how it fits in is why you're so successful.
Yeah.
Success is not accidental.
Yeah, and that's so right, and being able to explain, coming from a technical background, I wasn't a pro racer, and like you said, these ex pros weren't successful. They were failed ex pros. So, I was a successful mechanic. We ran a successful race team. We decided to step away from it because it was just time. I got tired of traveling. Remember, I got offered a deal to work for Cole Seeley. I mean, as I was wrenching, for Kennard, and then the factory Honda called, hey, you want to work for Cole Seeley? That sounds cool. Factory Honda. Like at the time I'm 26, I'm grinding. Okay, yeah, that's the pinnacle of our sport, right? As far as what I was going for at the time, as a
Yeah,
mechanic. And Torrance, California, $55,000 a year living in Torrance, California. And that's I was like, no, this there's got to be something more. So it was not like I needed to make money and I transitioned to this. I transitioned to it because I saw, like you said, there was a lot of things. I think a lot of people, it could be done better, And again, like you said, it's like it doesn't make sense to ride 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever days, but it is. It's easy to run a business like Walmart, dude. For me, for sure, dude. I want the weekends off. You know how easy it is to open up on Monday and close it down on Thursday and just say I'm gonna have a 3-day weekend every weekend. You
yep,
can have family, but that is not conducive to winning. Like winning, you got to be a fucking maniac to win at anything, right? To be at the
yep.
top of anything, and it's got to consume your life. So, yeah, what's the best? Again, what's the best for the pocketbook and what's the easiest is never, never the answer for the result.
Absolutely. That's good
Interesting.
stuff.
You're talking about like the whole 10x rule, and it's funny that I always say that originality is undetected plagiarism is just what Coach was talking about, where some guy wins a championship, then you have everyone else trying to implement that same situation in order to have the similar results, and they get close, right? But with your guys' backgrounds, that's where you can differentiate and bring a little bit more to the table. And part of me feels as if almost anyone can be successful if they're as crazy about it. Just like what you were saying, Greg, with if you just fine tune all the small little details and you do what unsuccessful people are unwilling to do, well, you're going to be better than 99% of the people. In my opinion, is success happens. Yes, there's some talent involved, but it's mainly hard work and you got a little bit of luck. You got to be at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
So when success meets opportunity, that's when real growth happens. So,
Well, Johnny, but you also have to add one
I mean, I'm at
additional
talent.
dynamic as well. I've got a couple high school runners in California. These guys are sub 15-minute 5K guys. I've
Oh,
got
that's not that fast. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's like really, really fast.
at the high school level, right?
Oh
I've
gosh.
got one athlete who is a musician. He loves to write music. He likes to perform. He loves to practice, right? He runs 15 miles a week. He runs one day of speed, one day of hills, one day long. He's a sub 15-minute guy. I've got
That's
another
nothing.
gentleman who runs 50 to 75 miles a week, and he's also a sub 15-minute guy. So if you were to take and look at that example, you couldn't have anything that's any more, further from one another. I call it the bookend approach. You have one guy that's running 15 miles a week, sub 15. You've got a guy that's running 50 to 75, sub 15. How do you say one's right and one's wrong? And that's what I like what Greg's doing. He could have 5 riders, 5 different methodologies getting the same result in a different way. That's what you don't see when you get to the Walmart cookie cutter side.
What you're talking about is like a facility. It's here's
Well,
your
just
paperwork, here's our training program, here's basically when you can ride, and that's what we're doing.
And we do that here too. Like, I preface that before I said, "Hey, I'm throwing a blanket over everybody right now. I know this
yeah,
isn't going to work, but that we have to do that, right? You have to say, okay, this is what I
starting
think with the
point.
group I have, but here, come, we can make an adjustment, from here or there. But I always preface that like, hey, this isn't the end all be all. This is the blanket I'm throwing over. If it works, if not, let's talk and we can work within, whatever we need to do. Certain parameters to make sure you're getting what you need out of this.
But Johnny, the thing that you said that I wanted to kind of capitalize on was the word passion. If you guys are into the running world at all, unfortunately, we lost the current world record holder for the marathon, 2 hours and 4 minutes, 24-year-old. was killed in a car accident with his coach, unfortunately. The reason why I bring him up on our show is when you mentioned passion, Johnny, there was a gentleman that did a tribute video on YouTube about him, 24 years old. Now, Johnny, I'm glad you put your coffee down because you're probably going to drop it. This guy runs 200 miles a week at 24 years old.
I don't know how his knees are able to do that.
But what this
And he
guy's
probably can't get his dick up at all either because
he's got 3 kids at 24 years old. So he's more of a man than you and I combined. Clearly.
Okay, well, he's definitely taking some testosterone and
Yeah.
everything too. Because
Well,
you and I
and
both know once you run over a certain amount, like
yeah.
there's too much stress on the body. Like you literally can't get it up anymore.
Yeah, well, a 204 tells you PEDs. That's not humanly possible without PEDs. And that's okay. That's not what I want to focus on.
Sorry,
But
I started that.
no, you're okay, boss. The whole point though was this tribute video was talking about how he literally loved running. And that he actually posted his training log and showed how he was getting around 200 miles a week. Now, for the average person, cycling 200 miles a week would seem like a lot. This guy's on 2 feet running every day. But I think it goes back to what Greg was saying. If you've got somebody who's willing to put in the work and has that passion and is absolutely erotic, just has so attached to the process and the system. If Greg says, stand on your head and sing Kumbaya, you'll get it from him because he trusts the process and the system. And this is where I love what Greg's doing. He's not here saying it's about me. Look at the results. Now, if you want to know how we got there, yeah, Greg's the man. He's going to walk you through those incremental steps. But he doesn't have some magic elixir that you could drink and all of a sudden you're going to be the next Trey Kennard or the next Jimmy. You got to put it in. You got to put that work ethic in. You got to put the sweat equity in, and then let Greg massage it and say, hey, you're doing a little too much. Hey, you're not doing enough. Maybe you need to do this, maybe, and then quantify it.
Yeah.
It's a constant apply, evaluate, adjust. But unfortunately, most people don't have the expertise like Greg does. They can apply. Unfortunately, they don't know how to evaluate, so they don't know how to adjust.
Yeah. So for me, like I'm like I would compare what I'm doing to like a GPS. Like my sole thing is creating a condition. Okay, that's what I'm good at with the track, and then I'm also good at on the bike technique. But everything else, like here's the deal: I'm going to set up a program from like a team manager standpoint. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to get somebody like you don't have an off the bike program, Coach Rob, or the guy we use right now is Greg Dorenzo. He writes all of our programs. He was Kennard's trainer. He's got his PhD in kinesiology. I put those pieces together and put you with experts, right? I don't want to be that guy that tells you, okay, hey, we're going to go run. Because I don't know, dude. Like, it's so funny. Like, we go back to that, and it's like, you've got, like, I see these facilities and this is what parents want, and it's what I refuse to do. But then, like, they'll go buy a bunch of spin bikes, and I see these kids. Like, my kids are on trampolines doing backflips, and we have some, like, stuff where they can play. But, like, I see 9 and 10-year-olds that people are putting on spin bikes. It's I just laugh at it, right? And it doesn't. It's not just for me, you know what I mean? It's because
Sorry, can you
I've
elaborate
learned
on
from
that?
guys.
Somebody
I've learned
like
from guys like you know what I mean? And I know like that's it. But again, it's what we're gonna put them in. They see Ryan Dungey on a bicycle, so we're gonna put them. I'm just. So my biggest thing is like I'll put together the pieces here. This is what we're going to use for a motor builder. This is what we're going to use, and I work like a team manager to put the pieces together. I know where I fit in, but then I also as like if you let me into your whole program from the bike to the physical coach to blood, whatever we need to do here. You need to be here. Here's your GPS. Now it's on you to just follow this path, and then that's when you can figure out if the guy's going to do it or not.
Greg, can you elaborate on, is it just wasted energy putting a 9-year-old on a spin bike, or are you just basically burning him out? Like,
That's
do you mind?
that's a Coach Rob deal. But like people that come to me, right? These amateur kids. They're not all of them are winning, but they want to get to that level. The parents want them to get to that level, and you can tell by how hard somebody tries. But for me, like the awareness, like jumping is such a big deal with young kids, and the parents won't say it, but like I just think that the ability to ride bicycles and do stuff, and like Coach Rob said, like when you look at heart rate monitor data, like it just seems counterproductive to me unless you're racing at the top end and doing 35-minute motos. I mean, at the end of the day, Loretta's, you race 120-minute moto a day, maybe 2 20-minute motos, 5 hours apart from each other. It's not professional racing. We're so caught up in at the facility side, oh, we got to be in shape. And yeah, you have to be in some sort of shape, but like diet gets so overlooked for me because these kids are on the bike so much. And if they're pushing, if the effort's there, like they're going to be in plenty of shape. Alex Martin had put something up on what's more important, fitness or technique. And, it was obviously just an Instagram thing just to get some feed. Obviously you need both, but, you're talking about the 1.5% percenters that are out in the top 20 of outdoor nationals, and dude, the rest of motocross is a joke. It's a sprint. You know what I mean? As long as you're in some kind of physical shape, and strength building for me is so underutilized, because these kids got to be strong. They got to execute a start, and they got to ride their motorcycle for 8 minutes. That's it.
That's good.
It's a good way of looking at it, yeah, because it really doesn't become a problem until you're at the professional level, where now you're like, wait, now I need to do 35 minutes, and I need to be doing it just as fast as my first lap. But with amateur motocross, it's literally just about sprint speed, and at that point, then you're talking about, okay, you can go fast, but are we going to help prevent injuries by how you're going fast? Because yeah, Ricky Carmichael got away with a lot of somewhat, yeah, I'm going to say it, bad technique, but he just was incredibly strong that he was able to ride out of a lot of bad situations. Like we all know, Carmichael had his handlebars way down, his elbows down, but he was just able to keep it WFO, and it worked for him. He was the exception, not the rule. But if you're wanting to prevent injury, it's got to happen with technique. Then you can build on all the extra stuff when it comes to getting in shape,
Yeah.
right? You can somewhat ride yourself into shape.
Yeah, I agree, and honestly, I listened to a few podcasts, and Maths is one of them, and and obviously that's a big podcast. Everybody kind of knows that name, but he said something the other day. You can skin that cat 100 different ways, and you said that, you touched on that, Rob, but I disagree with the technique. I think there's one. You can ride like yesterday, like RJ Hamstar, or you can ride like tomorrow, like Jet Lawrence, and we're out of the days where that's going to work, right? You're seeing too close a separation. So no different than Coach Rob being in the gym teaching a deadlift. You can't go, oh, you can do this deadlift 100 different ways. No, you can fucking do it one way good, and that's what's going to get you there. Now these other, could you get the weight off the ground? Of course, you could look like RJ Hampshire, but why can RJ Hampshire win one race and go another 8 without winning? He's behind the bike, his elbows are down, and it's there's no kind of consistency, and that was kind of back in the day. You just, like I said, all the kids that are coming to me now are showing up on the balls of their feet. They're showing up that, so this information wasn't out there. You were either there's so much coaching going on right now, and like with the facilities, I think people are under the impression that people come to facilities and get fast. Facilities are for where fast people get faster. Kids that aren't fast aren't going to really get any faster. So for me, there is a proper way to ride the bike, and it's really showing, because if you look at the guys that are doing Sexton, the Lawrence brothers, Webb, Anderson, they're all doing the same thing. They're all riding heavy over the front. They're regripping. You know what I mean? They're the elbows down. Like I said, it's RJ Hampshire, Faulkner, and there's a reason these guys get hurt a lot, and they make way too many transitions. Like Cooper Webb, if you look Cooper Webb and you look at Cooper Webb with his shirt off compared to Chase Sexton, I was watching this at Dallas last year. I mean, one of them looks like a fucking athlete, and the other one just looks like a dad. But at the end, but Cooper Webb's
I'm
known.
sorry, because I've made that joke too.
Cooper Webb is known for late race charges. So then I was at Dallas last year. I hadn't been to Supercross in a while, and I watched Cooper, and Cooper made 11 transitions from the seat to standing, and Sexton in the same race made 18 in a lap. And you're telling me that it's not about that, and it's about comfort, okay? If fitness always, and it does, you need a certain level of fitness. I was running with Jake Weimer, and he was like, he was like, oh man, I'm doing pretty good. It was a couple years ago, and we were at like a 9-minute mile, and I'm like, what did you used to run? He was like, I used to run like a 750, and I'm thinking like, fucking John Short cranks out 550 miles. I'm like, that was your pace? Yeah, but it's just about being as good a shape as you can be, and it's not going to translate to the bike, right? So comfort is everything, right? I tell some of my kids, it's like, you got Usain Bolt, right? He's a hell of an athlete, but I bet if you threw the motherfucker in a swimming pool, he'd get to the other end of the pool, wore the fuck out, because he's not comfortable. He doesn't know the technique. He doesn't know the breathing. So I feel like motocross for me, that's how I try to equate things. You know what I mean? You cannot overcome uncomfortability. You're always going to be tired. No matter how good shape you're going to be, if you're not comfortable, you're going to be tired, because if being in shape was going to get you there, Andrew Short would have been kicking Chad Reed's ass his entire career.
Dude, the swimming pool analogy, that is probably one of the best ones I have heard because, dude, in a swimming pool, you can try your ass off and you will literally go slower. And that's kind of riding bikes is always funny because people that aren't in this demographic of just psychopaths when it comes to motorcycle racing, they're like, dude, you ride a motorcycle. Like, what do you mean your heart rate's doing 205 or anything? You don't have to be in shape for that because they compare that to riding down the freeway on your Harley, just bruh, 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 bruh. And it's so true on a national track. Like, you could be somebody that is in amazing shape, but if you're not feeling sound with the motorcycle and you're not talented enough to ride the rough track, you're basically putting around in first gear. Like, there's such a weird correlation with riding where you could be walking, but you could also be running. And it's a weird fine line that usually the contributing factor is being comfortable. Once you're comfortable on the bike, you can really attack. I know we all, even in the chat room, you can tell yourself that you've been to tracks before where you just can't attack. You're not getting tired because you're not comfortable on the motorcycle, or you're so uncomfortable on the motorcycle you can't even ride because you're squeezing on way too effing hard and you can't even use your controls because you've got arm pump and you're not breathing, and it's so weird.
Well, but you also have to remember, Johnny, when you look at the balance of strength and flexibility, and then you could take fitness, right? Sprint speed, muscular endurance, lactate tolerance, put those together as kind of a bundle. If you put those together, then you can do the biomechanic request that Greg has. If somebody can't get in the correct biomechanical position that Greg's asking for, he could be over strong in one muscle and not have flexibility in the other. The one that I always use is, if you keep dabbing your foot in the corner, is that a strength issue on the top of the leg or is a hamstring flexibility issue on the bottom? All Greg sees is that you're dabbing your foot. He hands that over to Greg. Greg goes and differentiates it and fixes it, right? When you're talking about something, you brought up swimming, great analogy. You've got to remember it takes 8 times the amount of energy to double your speed in the water as it does on dry land, just because of the density of water. You go, well, how would swimming be relevant to moto? Well, because we're taking strength and flexibility, we're bouncing it up against and integrating it through biomechanics, and then we're adding physics. Think about it. Our motorcycle's a moving gyroscope. We as a human move in a 3-dimensional plane. If you do that mathematically, right? If you have 3 different things, that's 27 different combinations, 3 to the 3rd power. So you've got a motorcycle that moves in an infinite amount of directions, offsetting velocity and speed, hitting obstacles, while we as a human try to balance that motorcycle in 3 dimensions of movement, left and right peg, above and below the peg, and front and behind the pegs. And it's happening in a split second. All you got to do is look at the collection of data nowadays off these motorcycles. They can tell you in a nanosecond where the throttle is at. In a nanosecond, they could tell you how deep the fork is in the stroke. Now think about that in real time terms. We're in autopilot, right? We're just constantly jockeying around on this motorcycle. So that's why I like what Greg is saying is you can't just take one sliver and go, this is the answer, this is the solution. It's the constant integration. Greg articulated that he's got Greg Dorenzo to help with strength and flexibility. You're not going to find anybody more equipped than Greg in the business. You take and incorporate that with Greg's, who's with us today. You attach what he's seen on and off the bike as an athlete, as well as working with others. And then he mentioned what I thought was a key component. He can get you lined up with the right suspension and motor builder to get the right delivery of power to a balanced bike. Now, all of a sudden, the bike is doing exactly what the rider thinks it should do. When the bike does it and it responds, the body can accommodate it. Now let's go fast. And I think that's where this whole, if you look at it as kind of like a linear equation, I think the equation gets flipped. Parents go and spend a boatload of money on suspension and motors, think the riding coach is going to be able to create something out of nothing, and then wonder why the end result isn't a championship at Loretta's. So I find the whole process completely upside down and backwards. But maybe I'm biased to it, but I've been around it for so long.
You're not. And I think, when you look at anything in business, right? Like, people are willing to do whatever it is for their kids, right? They might not do it for themselves. So it's amateur racing is a great business to be in for multiple reasons. You know, I remember going to the races on the pro side, and you know, people got wives and families and everything, and it's a job, right? Like you have to go be a mechanic or racer and whatever. They're at home and they want to be home. You're at a job, but like amateur motocross is great because the families are there together, right? It's their time they spend after work together. But at the same time, like where you're coming from when you're talking about the kind of money they're spending, like people want to skip steps. They want to go again. It was like, you know, to be able to do what a lot of the kids that come to me at any given time do, it's like they haven't earned it. You know, you haven't earned that. Like I said, facilities where fast kids should go to get faster, but they throw this at me, and you can just see, you know, if you want it. And we're talking like the stuff you're talking about, Rob. Like it's freaking awesome. But like I might talk to, I might see 3 to 4 clients all year long that get to that level, and I'm not working with anybody currently that's even willing to do that, you know. And the privateer thing, we did the privateer thing forever, and they're privateers for a reason, you know. For the most part, they're fucking lazy, and I mean, somebody I you know, this and that, and I saw how it operated, and I've been to that level. Everybody was, oh well, back in the day, or they expect to go get some 15ths and 16ths, and why don't I have a ride? It's always been the same. You got to go bang in the top 10 to get a ride, and then to do that you have to like doing that. And honestly, Trey Canard was a big part of my brother's program because that shit's expensive. It's expensive to have somebody like you, Rob. It's expensive to do everything. So when Jimmy was able to piggyback off of Trey's, you know, he was able to be successful. Phil Nicoletti did the same thing. Phil Nicoletti was down there with us, and you know, he was able. They were all able to kind of. Trey was awesome. He was good. They were all able to piggyback, and I think you see things like that. Jason Thomas was able to do that with Reed and some other guys because they bring an aspect to their program. So it's, you know, you need that, but like to go all the way back to where I'm at with these amateurs, like just go faster, right? Like me and Beckham, we have a thing. It's like, you know, it gets broken down so much. You guys are doing podcasts, AJ Catanzaro or this coach or Coach A, they're doing these videos, and this is why Jet wins, or this. At the end of the day, like he is the, you know, technique, but you could use Kenny or whatever. But at the end of the day, like I asked Beckham, he's 9 years old. I said, you know, I do it in front of, said, Beckham, what's the easiest way to win races? This is what we came up with. Go faster. It's simplify shit. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, everybody, because we're in this world of information, you know, it's that fine line of go faster, go fast enough, and then I can fix the problem, right? Like Coach Rob, if Coach Rob's got a kid that wants to hit it hard, right? Full speed, effort on everything, then you can coach that. You can't coach effort, right? You either got it or not. So when the kids push that way, I can fix problems. Just like if they were in the gym, like if you see them doing stuff, you can fix technique issues. But I tell kids, like, you can run around like, you know, all the kids know Ronnie, but the speed all those kids are going, for most of them, they could ride like Ronnie Mack and be fine, right? Because there's no speed. So I don't know. As the speed comes up, things come up. And you'd mentioned one other thing I wanted to touch on before I let you guys back have it, but balance, right? That, you know, there's muscles in this, but it's funny because I tell my kids like, oh well, my kid needs to work on balance and he needs his balance, and by all means they do, but I've seen some fast little kids with terrible balance. But and I explain it to them this way: the more speed you have, the less balance you need. So like if your speed's gonna to trump everything. So these kids are going really fast with poor balance because at the end of the day, you know, you're the slower you go. If you're running a tightrope, you got to do this, you know. But if you're sprinting or you're riding a bicycle, right, the faster you go, the easier it is, because you can't pedal a bicycle when you're riding a bicycle. The easiest way to ride a bicycle is fast with no hands, right? You start to ride slow with no hands. So I think we see a lot of kids on the amateur side that are starting to go really fast, that have, and then you get into that as they get older. Maybe that poor balance comes out, but everybody thinks, oh, I got to have this or that, and at the end of the day, the kids that are winning, or they just want to go fast, period.
No, you make a good point as far as ruts. When you see somebody go slow through a long rut, they're going to tip over, right? But if you see somebody just hauling butt, it seems as if they're just on rails.
And then the parent goes, oh, he's got good balance. He's railing that corner because he's got fucking speed. You know, he doesn't have, and he might have good balance, but speed trumps everything. And that's, you know, if you go all the way back, now there's no technique. So now you go back into the Ricky Carmichael days. You know what I mean? Well, Ricky did it this way. Ricky had more speed than everybody. You know what I mean? Maybe he had great balance. He was able to, I tell you what, he was able to hit the ground and get back to his feet quick. You know, he landed like a cat half the time. But yeah, man, who knows if his balance was any good? I'll tell you right now, his speed was better than everybody else's.
100%, 100%. Well, hey, that's a pretty good segue. You kind of answered the question that I was going to ask as far as when it comes to if you had. I'm going to ask it anyway because even though you somewhat answered it, Greg. Before we switch topics to Supercross here, I know Coach's answer to this, but what would you tell an amateur motocross athlete that wants to go pro? What would be your one biggest tip to tell them? It's a loaded question.
I would say if it's too hard, if you think it's hard, it's not for you. And what I mean by that is when people tell me how hard it is, it is extremely hard. But if it feels hard, it's not for you. Because if you really want something bad enough, it's not hard, right? I've had a weight problem my whole life. Like I fluctuate 50 pounds. I got a food addiction. And when I want to get in shape, going for a run at 6 in the morning is the easiest thing I do. When I switch that on, I get excited. You know what I mean? But when I'm not in that mode, if I don't want it, if I haven't set a goal, then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go do that. So if you want something bad enough, like I guess that's my thing, is like know that if you don't enjoy going to the gym, like you don't have to enjoy it every day, but if you're not looking forward to it and if you go, oh well, I have to do this, dude, it's not for you. It should feel so easy. Dude, living in a motorhome, sleeping on fucking couches, doing everything we did. Everybody's like, oh, that must have been, dude, none of it was ever hard. But like if you look back on it, you put it on paper, you go, oh shit, these guys were fucking grinding. It never seemed that way. So I think knowing if you've got the chops to make it, how hard is it for you to get up and do the things that you need to do to get there? If it's extremely hard, it's never going to happen for you.
It's interesting. It's good advice.
So knowing that, don't waste your time. You know what I mean? Like don't waste your time. And then dude, there's so many rich kids. Before we transition, I want to make what I've learned in this business. You've got three types of successful riders, kids that ride. Okay, so you've got, which is what you mentioned, just like almost your idiot like passion, nothing matters. Colleen, I love Colleen, but like she wasn't a pro motocrosser, right? She got nothing. Jeannie Carmichael, Stewart's dad, right? What do they have? They were just nuts. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you're 9, you jump the fucking triple no matter what, right? There was just it's just like outright crazy. There's no excuses, go faster, right? There's no sympathy. So there's that, which that way's on its way out. It worked for a long time. Then you've got the parent, and I'm talking about the parent. This isn't the parents. You're talking about the parent. The second parent is, which I really like, is the first generation money. So entrepreneur that understands what the time it takes to be successful at something. Somebody that started something for nothing. So a family that's a successful dad or mom that has started a business from scratch, their kids seem to be really successful in motocross because they understand the time and the details it takes to be successful.
Rich kid,
and
right? Is what you're
no, because then you're talking about second, third generation money where the money's always been in the family, and no, those kids are fucking lazy because the parent, and it's an automatic trickle down. It's gonna happen.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's gonna happen. So, but they tend to be good. They're not as hungry. Don't get me wrong, but they tend to be good. And then what you're seeing now a lot of is, I feel like obviously the best situation is, a Johnny Tomac or a Nick Way, an ex-professional athlete that's now. So those three, they're so much different, but like they're all three. Those are the most. Not that it has to go those ways, but those are the three most successful kids that your parents, because everything's about the parents, right? You mentioned it earlier. Like it's not luck, but it kind of is. Like, I mean, if you've read the book Outliers, like that's spot on. Like there's so much, that has to fall in place. Nobody does anything by themselves, right? Whether it's time or location and how shit like comes together, so much has to happen. So, obviously, and you look and it's been brought up too, you need at this, you need parents that are together too, and that are on the same page too. You can't, divorced parents aren't working either. So, I mean, I just kind of look at trends and I try to keep parents and families, like I treat it like a team manager, really. Okay, every family's running their own team. So what can we do? Because I'll give completely different advice to completely different families because they've got different budgets. Every family, race family's got different budgets. They got different relationships. They all tick different. And the most thing is finding something that you can do for the long haul, like longevity, right? So a lot of people want to go all in and they burn out quick and it leads to divorce or whatever, and little Johnny's, then it's over. You know what I mean? You have to find some kind of program for yourself and your family that's sustainable.
It's a balancing act for sure. Cause there's so many stories out there where this sport does kind of destroy the families,
Yeah.
not that I'm speaking from experience, but yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway,
What about you, Rob? Though, like you deal with a lot of different athletes on different. I don't know the answer to this, but I would assume at the top level of anything, whether it's travel baseball or whatever, or anything at the top level, I'm sure the families go through that at any sport. Or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. You've probably
No,
seen it.
you're absolutely spot on. And the laziness associated with second and third generation money is the most profound thing you've said today. Because what I find is interesting is my wife and I speak about this all the time. I'm 55 years old. And when you see somebody that when we were in our 40s are going and buying multi-million dollar houses, you're like, where did that money come from? Right? Let's say you're making a good living. Let's say you're making $250,000 a year. Like, my point, I'm not going to go down that bunny
Yeah.
trail. The bottom line is what you see by the time you get to the second, or particularly when you get to the third and the fourth generation of money. Your great grandfather, he built an immaculate farm. Your grandfather, he grew that farm. He bought more land. He took the vision and kept growing it. Third generation comes and says, I'm going to sell everything and cash out.
I want to give you a little thing. I'll let you know this, and everybody knows this name, but Nario Izzy is Nico's dad. He bankrupted third generation concrete business that was fucking killer. And
There
look
you
at
go.
what happened with the son.
Yep.
That gets back to Nario. I love, but like I'm just, it's not a knock. I mean, of course, it sounds like that or whatever, but I'm looking at it's for what I do. I have to look at all these different scenarios, right? And go, okay, why didn't this work? You know what I mean? So I study. I like it. I read and I look at different scenarios. Why didn't this work out? Why did my brother's career work out the way it did? We didn't have any money. We didn't have money growing up. My dad was a used car salesman, but my dad's a super loyal guy. He's about relationships. He's sales. And my brother turned the privateer thing. My dad taught him, so he was able to do stuff. But in '02, the Yamaha 250F came out. We happened to be the town we lived in, Missouri, was a Yamaha dealership. We had a relationship with them. That bike was so much better. All the fast kids at the time were riding Kawasaki's, and they were on factory Kawasaki or Suzuki. So at that time, we couldn't pay to have mod bikes, but that bike was so much better out of the crate. And all the fastest guys were on those two bikes that didn't produce four strokes. So my brother's winning. Now he's going from being he's literally a seventh place guy. And now he's winning shit. And now stuff's piling in, right? So it was like the time of the four stroke coming out. The fact that we lived in this town and my dad was loyal to this dealership. Because if it was a Kawasaki dealership, and my dad wouldn't have gone and got a Yamaha from another dealership. He's a loyal dude. Like all this shit fell into place, and so much shit has to happen, and like that's the only reason my brother rode the C class in '02 at Loretta Lynn's, and rode a factory Honda 450 in '08. 6 years apart,
6
he rode the
years.
C class. No, go look. That shit doesn't happen, right? So like, why did that happen? There's a lot of reasons. My brother's a freaking savage. He was always able to push. My dad always said, "You want what they got, you're gonna have to beat him," because he wasn't gonna do it. And then just how everything fell into place, and his mentality, and just how he raised, me and him, and that's all we cared about. So, but like I look at things like that. So I brought up the Nario Izzy thing because we were talking about the second, third generation money and how that bankrupt. But like I've dissected my life, everybody around me's life in these different ways, and like I said, it's
well, it's
not
good.
a knock.
It's how it's you learn more from mistakes than success,
Mhm.
and you learn how not to do it and how to do it differently. Again, originality is undetected plagiarism. You take what worked for people and what didn't work for people. It's the same deal with if you're trying to make a light bulb, you're not going to start from scratch again. You're going to build off of Thomas Edison, who already figured out how to do it, right? And then you can just figure out how to make it better. And Greg, Jimmy has always been somebody that I've looked up to because you could tell how much that kid worked. And truthfully, I sort of feel like he should have been more successful than what he was, but it wasn't the lack of effort or talent, it was the lack of opportunity. And I think that's what's wrong in this sport in so many ways is people feel like they should be given certain stuff. I mean, it's by no default that you have all guys that are on factory bikes right now. They've been in the limelight since they were little kids. They've all been on factory stuff since they were little kids.
Yeah.
They were bred to do this, and I don't know where I'm going with that. I guess I'll just leave it from there. Is you could take somebody. There's people that are more talented out there than a Sexton or a Webb. They just haven't had the right opportunity. I remember talking with my coach, Donnie Hansen, and he was always telling me, Johnny, you need to get out of Colorado to be successful, you know, but my parents, we had no money, so we weren't really able to do anything until I was old enough to fit the bill. But it was something that I
But I
really
mean,
regret.
I'll stop you right there. We were in Missouri, and we didn't have money, and other families. My brother started getting fast, and he goes, they go, well, if we could train in Texas all the time, you know, like Jimmy, if we could do this, if we can do that, like you said, well, I could, and I was in California, dude. You can. You just didn't figure it out. I mean, I hate to say it. So my parents, my dad, my dad, they went through
Touche,
a
touche,
certain
touche.
bankruptcy. My brother went down to train with Shannon Nide, and he was going to stay. And then the first night, him and his wife got in a big fight, and he got kicked out of the house. And my brother, there was a shed. He built it, and he wouldn't call my dad and tell him that he was like, because the wife, it wasn't anything he did wrong. They were just going through this. My dad would have went down and picked him up in a second. My brother slept in a shed for 2 months because he didn't want to make that call to my dad because it was going to come up. My dad and my mom lived apart. They didn't make, and it was, what can we do? My dad was just like, what can we do? How can I get to race for free? You know what I mean? Like, he was there, he would announce races, he would go figure out how to get stuff for free. We live, I mean, like, so we did it. And families that had way more money, like way more money than us, would say, oh, well, they're only fast. I wish I could live in Texas. I wish I could try. Like, dude, you can. You just didn't.
Greg,
And that's it. All boils down to what I said. What's the best? How bad do you want it? You know, because you
it's
will figure it out.
it's the 10x rule, right? And it sounds like you had some incredibly good role models that, yeah, you were limited on resources, but the one resource that you had was you had somebody that had massive amounts of hope and was just, hey, we're going to figure this freaking out. And then
Yeah, so
compiled.
Jimmy had the heart, you know what I mean? And my dad, you know, when you see that out of your kid, I think a lot of people want that. And I'm going to give my kid everything, but my dad really saw that. He didn't, not that he didn't care, but he saw how bad my brother wanted it because he was willing to go out there and kill himself. And I think when you crash like that and you see the kid going as fast as he can, and it was a dangerous at time. My dad would pull him up. You're not racing. Dennis Joni would show up sometimes, and he had a factory Cali ride, and my brother would wad him.
Oh, there we are.
I might have to remove him from the.
I think
They're yelling at. Oh, excuse me. I like fall. Most dads are yelling at their kids, "Go faster!" My dad would come up and
Greg's
yell at my
back
brother. You're gonna kill him. You're gonna kill yourself, Jimmy. We're done. If you keep crashing, we're done. So it was like a complete opposite of what I see out of the parents training their kids. Like,
And I am gonna call Greg out on something, Johnny.
Go for it.
He said that his dad wanted something for free. His dad's announcing, he's cleaning up trash, he's doing whatever he has to do. I love it. Can you help my son out? But by the way, I'll announce, I'll score. So you've got a dad that's not out there saying, my kid's fast with the palm open. He's like, I will do anything that I can do to help my son get to where and help you along the way. I think it was pretty interesting.
Well, it's just a different
awesome.
dynamic, right? You
Yeah,
know, and
yeah.
you can see how things were successful. Like, unfortunately, I was raised from a very negative atmosphere where it was a constant, look what they have. You don't have it. Look what they have. You don't have it. And as like a young kid, you know, you're susceptible to all different informations around you. It's the reason why as a kid you end up being Christian or whatever type of sway of politics you are. It's because of your parents, right? And
100%.
who you hang out with. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And as a kid, let's think about who you spend the most time with, you know? So it's just interesting to hear different experiences and how they worked out, right? And now myself as an adult and as a parent myself, I can look and do things differently and learn from other people's experience, you know?
Yeah.
And Greg, it's funny on the outside looking in with your brother's YouTube and everything he does with Ronnie Mack, it looks as if it's just a bunch of goofing off and everything, but it is apparently obvious how much work that you guys put in to making that successful and that whole dramatization of that character and everything. Like, there is a massive amount of work that goes into it, and it just reinforces everything that you say about your guys' family, and it's the
Yeah.
same reason as to why you're successful with training young kids and everything. It's because of the workload. It's the whole 10X rule. Do what others are unwilling to do.
Yeah, and then but you said it too, like it all comes back to like Coach Rob. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Like you've got the guys running like Weimer is a friend of ours, and he said his dad was so negative, and my dad comes up and does a Villapoto camp, and he hangs out with us, and because he likes Oregon, and he's like, man, I wish Brian was my dad, but look, he was super successful because he's like, oh, my dad was so negative, but he was super successful. So there's no one way. I'm glad my dad taught me how to look at things. I always see it. One thing that really brings up, there was this our local track, it wasn't really good at all, but I get it all the time now. Kids are always complaining about the track. Track sucks, and parents, oh well, we paid this for this, but we would come up and there was a hill leading into the track, and we were kids. How do you think the track's going to be today? I don't know. And we would always crest the hill, and no matter if it was the driest, it was a mud day. No matter what the track looked like, he goes, oh, I don't know. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. Ah, it's perfect. That's what he would say every time track's perfect. And it could have been, and that was just kind of, our deal, and I remember we were living
Attitude is everything.
in the van. We were living in the van. We had a conversion van, and I remember we were at Lake Whitney, and we had no money, and we were so he had convinced us. We were so excited to go get. We weren't. Oh, we can only afford Jack in the Box. Monster tacos were $1, and that's what we could afford. So hey. Monster taco. Well, how many monster tacos? I mean, he just made it fun. I remember cooking hot dogs. You know what I mean? We didn't have steaks or burgers. Sometimes it was just a hot dog, and he would stab the hot dog. He goes, "Oh, what kind of hot dog we're having?" And oh, that one's a Labrador. That one's a Chihuahua. And it was just never like, hey, we got to eat hot dogs for everything was so I think that really carries over, and you can see that in the Ronnie Mac stuff. And
Is your guys' dad still around, Greg?
Oh yeah, he's awesome, and it's
cool.
You can see the demographic. Jimmy's just with the Ronnie Mac stuff, he was always so it's taken off as a business since he retired, but that was kind of always the thing. It was always just something for fun, and people gravitated to it. And what he's done with that to make that a successful business is pretty awesome. That he can just have fun and do that. I know it's a lot of work for him, but
hey,
man,
Coach and Greg, there's a question in the chat that I feel is very relevant to this conversation. John says, how much is a good relationship with the parents, mostly the dad, important for a kid to grow as a pro?
I'll let Rob start on that.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely imperative. And not to be curt with the reply, I think we need to make sure that the son-father relationship stays exactly that. I'm very vocal about the idea that I need to be the bad guy in the relationship. If at the end of however far the career goes, we don't ever want to do anything that jeopardizes a relationship between his parents. There's numerous cases in our sport that are very public that there is no relationship anymore with the rider and with his parents, in either male or female. Parents taking money from the athlete. Just the list goes on and on. So I always think the type of service that Greg was mentioning earlier, where a family could latch on with Greg and his expertise, get positive direction, straight line, suspension, motor. Where should we ride? Who should we use off the bike? Who should we use? Now, all of a sudden, I apologize, Greg, I didn't catch who you said. The parents are like a factory team. They give the rider what they want. They stay over in the wheelhouse of being a parent and let Greg's program call all the shots. Now, that obviously takes a tremendous amount of trust, but I think that's the best way to go. And to answer the question, I think the relationship with the son and the dad is imperative, because the son, I don't care what anybody says, no matter how much of a badass you want to act like you are, we all want the approval of our father. End of story. That's all there is to it.
You made a good point, or not point, but you said, I want to be the bad guy in the relationship. And I've gotten this reputation that, I'm this hard ass trainer. I'm kind of an asshole. But my whole thing, I've had my fair share of kids, seen it, dads, motherfucking 8-year-olds, you piece of shit motherfucker. I gotta put it down. And I've seen hands, and I've had to set that down. And obviously you get that out as quick as possible. But then there runs a fine line with parenting. So my thing is, if you are that coach that just lets stuff fly, okay, yeah, good job, and you don't jump their asses, I I don't want to see that happen at the trailer. I want to do my job so I can be the bad guy, and then the dad doesn't feel like he's not suing. Okay, Greg said it already, or whatever. You know what I mean? So then I can be the bad guy. But on the same end is like I've had some clients in the past, and they don't last long. But like I would say, when you have a good coach, parent, because we're dealing with kids, so if you have to have it's not. You say, oh, you need to be able to work with the athlete, but like my business, I've been the most successful with 6 to 12-year-olds. That's a whole different ballgame. We've won Loretta's in the 50 class multiple times. Worked with guys like Beckham Smith, Jaden Smart, Cade Nightingale. I mean, the the Sexton, Webb, Lawrence brothers, like that of the 65, 85 world is my wheelhouse, and I've dealt with these guys. So when I look at what these parents are doing, I have to be hard on them. Like I have to be hard so they don't have to have those tough moments with their parents. And I think and that's why I think get respect from the top end. But when you have a parent, it's like having divorced parents. So if you got a divorce, sorry to kind of jump around, but if you have divorced parents and little Johnny's over at mom's house or dad's, yeah, whatever, and they come over and then mom's like, he's like, well, dad said I couldn't do this, or dad this, and well, dad's an asshole. Dad, if they're doing a teaching moment, but they're not together, right? They don't respect each other, so they're not sticking up for each other. I need that relationship with the parent, right? If I can jump in a kid's ass, they go, okay, this is what Greg means. Because they get to see the kid, right? I get it for a split. Greg cares about you, but when the mom or the dad come back and I rip into a kid, and they're like, oh, well, Greg's just being a butthole today, or Greg's just doing this. We have to all back each other up for it to work on the amateur end. So I'm quite the opposite. I'm sure with, Coach Rob, you're really talking fitness. So your kids are older, but like my kids are so young that the parents are such an instrumental part of what we do that like that's probably my biggest asset is the relationship, not with my riders, but with my riders' parents.
Yeah. Trickle down effect, like you said, Johnny.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. Just, well, I know we've spent over an hour talking about that. But my thumbnail was really about, do we think Deegan and Roxon are going to be able to back it up with another win? And okay, so Coach, let's hear your take on that.
No, I just don't think. I mean, Roxon was at the right place at the right time. That track suits him well. He's always done well in that stadium. But no, I don't think we'll see Roxon again. Maybe if you're talking about this upcoming weekend, no, I don't think you're going to see a Roxon win. I think you're going to see Jet come back to kind of pick right up where he left off. We saw how he was able to go through the pack with a bad start. What was he in the first turn or at the end of the first lap? I think he was in 13th place or something, and got himself all the way up to third on a track that really wasn't conducive for passing. So it's pretty hard to argue against Jet in the 450 class, especially if we get a track that's pretty tacky. That's why I was shaking my head no. With Deegan, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this tomorrow night is going to be round one of the East Coast, because when 92% of the top guys get cleaned out in the first turn, am I saying Faulkner's not fast? No, that's not what I'm insinuating at all. But I think there's some guys that can give him a run for his money, and I think we're going to see that tomorrow night for the first time. You've got to throw that first one out as if it was a mud race. I mean, there's no way you look at who got
Well, we've
collected
got
in
the
the
same
first turn.
90-degree corner too.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part. I was actually thinking about this yesterday, and I would appreciate both of yours input. Remember back in the early 80s, we'd have starts and they would like have them have a little bit of a drop off, or they'd put a little roller about 20, 30 feet down the start line to try to throw people's. And I don't want to sound like a hypocrite here. I don't want to see a bike get thrown off of balance when it's under full acceleration. But I'm wondering, when we have a straightaway that goes into a corner like that, we saw what happened last time. It didn't end very well. Putting something between where the gate drops and that first turn that would cause there to be some level of separation. What are your thoughts on that, Greg?
I don't know if it will make that big of a difference. I mean, I think it would cause maybe a more dangerous situation in the 450 class. If you look at the 250, if you look at the 250 riders, like even last year when Faulkner had that incident, like I'd sent him a message. I've known Austin for a while. I haven't worked with him. I worked with him on a 50 and a 65 way back in the day, but never worked with him as a professional. I noticed he comes out of the gate. He was last year, and he comes out of the gate, and so did somebody this weekend or last week at Detroit. They are sitting down and they stand up and they do this butt kick shift to grab a gear and like get back. You don't need to do that. That bike's tracking. You don't see the 450 guys do those unnecessary movements. So the 250 class, Fortner did that last year, but I remember he was practicing starts. I said, why do you
I think I've seen
get up
Evan Ferry
and
do
like
that.
butt kick? It's such a retarded thing. And then everybody's like, maybe it was one of your videos, Hopper. Somebody put one on freaking YouTube. It's like, oh, Jet's doing this revolutionary shifting thing when he's grabbing the shift with his boot and leaving his boot down. I'm like, McGrath did that. That was Gary Simmick's 1991. Like, noth's come
Still,
around.
not a
Like,
lot of people know about it, right? The
no,
general.
everybody. I mean, any student knows about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
any professional who's somewhat solid at their craft, but the outside looking in, that's just how small our sport is it's something that should be local knowledge, but it's not as known as we would think. And that's the biggest thing that, like, what I do on my channel, Greg, is there's lots of people that don't necessarily ride as for making it a job as per se, like how we were raised. And so they don't really pick up on some of those things. And
no,
that's
and it's really cool you put that out there, but I get that from my students. Like, and it's great when that comes out, like, oh my God, like they'll send me something you did, or like Catton's already, and they're like, oh, look, you're right, because they're saying that because Jet does. I'm like, dude, this is nothing's revolutionary. Like, this stuff's so old. And it's just, when you look at Jet, he's such a, if you look at what, Dazzy's done with those kids, and with the Mossy deal, using Greg Moss, and they were such a technique Nazi. You know who else was a technique Nazi? Was Chase Sexton's dad, like to the point of crazy. And look at like how, like that's what's successful now. And then you've got 30-year-olds like Jordan Smith and RJ Hampshire in the 250 class, not because they're not fast. When you get to the top level, that's what I tell these kids. You're gonna think how you're gonna beat them by trying harder.
Here,
Oh,
Greg,
go out
are
there
you
and ride
watching
harder.
this?
Like, yeah, dude, everybody's trying hard, dude. Like, how are you gonna beat them? What are you gonna change? Oh, well, next moto, I'm gonna really get them. I'm gonna try harder. Like, dude, you're a professional. Like, everybody's
Greg,
trying
this
hard.
is what you're talking about. This is the last time I saw somebody do this, and it was Evan Ferry with what you're talking with the
butt kick.
shifting seat
It's a
thing.
65 rider learning to shift. It's retarded. Let me see what they got going on with Evan. Yeah,
That
dude,
right
like your bike is pulling. Like, it's not an outdoor start. You know what I mean? It's not an outdoor start where it's super deep. And maybe they just get used to doing that on outdoors, but like conditional awareness is so big. And I get kids now that don't know how to sit down and brake. Like, legitimately, like fast dudes that don't know how to brake sitting down. Like, they're stand up because they've been going to facilities. Stand in the middle of the corner. I'm like, why are you standing so late? Like, move less. Sit down when you can get away with sitting down. Ryan Dungey made a career out of sitting down. But like, I got kids like Cole Martinez came to me for Loretta's, and we won the fucking pro class as a 31-year-old off-road racer. But why did he win Loretta's? Not because he was the fastest, because he had the best conditional awareness. He sat where he needed to sit. He stood up where he needed to sit. He rode the track for each section how it needed to be ridden at Loretta's. Not, dude, he shouldn't have beat Ryder D and Chance Howard. He smoked dudes, and he was coming. But he had such good conditional awareness to ride. Oh, well, Greg told me to stand up, or this coach told me to stand up, so I stand up hitting quarters. No, like, they're never telling you that. The conditional awareness of knowing how to ride, not the whole track, but each section of the track. And that's why Cole Martinez won Loretta's, hands down. That should have never happened. But these kids, I don't think we have better riders today. Now we have faster riders, we have better machines, we have kids, but I mean, back in the day, your average intermediate rider could ride a first gear slow wheelie using the clutch, the rear brake. I would love to see how many kids in the B class at Loretta Lynn's who could ride a slow wheelie down the starting line. I'm not convinced our riders are better. I think I think they're more conditioned for a condition, and they put in so much time. I think their time is so much higher. They've logged so many more hours that's where I'm not convinced we have better riders today.
Yeah, Compound Effect. That is also a incredibly good book. Okay, segue, Greg. Roxon potentially winning again, and Deegan. We heard from Coach. What is your thought this weekend in Arlington?
I'll take Deegan and Anderson.
Okay, so you do think Deegan is going to win?
Yeah, him or
Okay.
Faulkner.
Oh,
I mean,
I meant Faulkner. Because Faulkner was the
you
one that
keep
actually
saying, yeah, you
won.
keep seeing Deegan. You keep seeing Deegan.
Yeah, no, I meant this. See, this is the problem with live shows. Speaking of live shows, if you guys are enjoying the information, make sure you wheel tap that like button so that the YouTube algorithm shares it out to more people. No, Faulkner was the one that's backing up a win, and so is Roxon. So,
Yes.
yeah, let's reframe my
I
question.
think Deegan is going to be the fastest rider there. Does he win? I don't know. With what he's coming up. But I'm not a betting guy. But if somebody said you have to put your money on who wins these races, I gotta put it on Deegan in the 250 class. I think that's the safest bet. Could Faulkner win very easily? And then in the 450 class, I think Anderson's due. He's had some really good races. His triple crown. It's a triple crown format again. Jets struggled in the triple crown format. I would say, he's the easy pick usually, but I look at this. Last year, if you go back and watch the triple crown from last year, Anderson had he's had his best races in Dallas, historically. And I do think he's going to come to Dallas with a good feeling. He's got a lot of friends here. The track, I think, is going to suit him. And I really think if Anderson's going to get one, I think it's going to be this weekend.
Interesting. And the Triumph. What do you think about the new team with Triumph in the 250 class?
I don't know. I feel like the bike seems good. It seems fast. If those guys are happy on it, it's just hard when you don't hire winning riders. It's really hard to understand like what that bike's capable of doing. Jalik seems, from what I saw of the first one, Jalik's results seem very similar to what they were, on the Husqvarna, which is a proven bike. So I think they have a good machine, and I think I think a top five is a great ride for Jalik, and I wouldn't be shocked if he's there. And I won't be shocked if he tags the back end of the podium with a third or something like that. I wouldn't. And then Evan, I don't know about Evan. I know I listened to stuff. Timmy's awesome. It's a great family, but I feel like he's a realist and a dad. He said, I think they were happy with the main event, and we don't know how hard he hit his head. That's a big deal to hit your head like that. You don't know. A concussion seems like, oh yeah, I just got knocked, but like it could be you don't know what that's going to look like. So I think Ferry is a huge question mark, but I don't think the bike's a huge question mark. Not after seeing what Jalik did on it. I think it's probably a pretty sideways move with that crew from Husqvarna to that new Triumph, at least what they're racing.
Oh, dude, that looks like such a bad hit, dude.
I mean, he just goes limp immediately. I mean, he just slides down the wall. I mean, it's just horrific.
Yeah, and he just barely missed the pad there.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question, Greg, because fuck, man, I've said this to nauseum as far as I feel there is no separation in the start with taking away that rut behind the gate with the metal and also the hole shot buttons and the ECUs. I think that's why we're seeing so many more crashes, is because these guys are so close to each other and the bikes are unable to move because they're locked down with no travel. So when they barely touch each other, things just explode. Honest opinion, am I just full of shit? Am I seeing something that isn't there? When I asked the riders when I was at Glendale, they all kind of gave me I love the metal. That's really what they told me. But
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's you can't
wait,
not be true.
agree with
You.
me?
I would agree with you,
Okay.
Hopper. It can be. It takes a lot of the guesswork out. And even back in 2016 when we had our Suzuki team, in 2015 we were on Yamahas. We as a privateer team, we put together stuff, and with Jim Lewis and Merge Racing, we had start maps. We did that kind of stuff. You could limit, and I can't imagine what Factory Honda could do right now. It's just it does take the guesswork out of it. But we did build start maps. Like my brother was a good starter. We built start maps for Oldenburg and Cunningham, and but my brother could always, he never used them. But we didn't have greats. So I don't know what that looks like now. I'll be real honest with you. I could tell you, we practice with amateurs on that, on grates all the time, and we get them off the grates really good because it's just super tacky, but we don't have access to that. And I haven't had access to that, with great stars. So I couldn't tell you, but I mean, everything you said is I think it's spot on. Like you've taken you've closed it up, but you still have, at the end of the day, I think what the riders feel is like, you're still going to be able to outwill somebody the first turn, right? You're going to be able to make changes with your motorcycle. I heard him on, well, it was either Swap Moto. I think it was Swap Moto, or it could have been Pulp. They were talking about, oh, the start maps, it makes it was Swap. He was talking about, I've never used a start map on my Cowie, and why would people use start maps or whatever. But he was saying, because it makes the bike a little bit more manageable off the start, like your typical start map you hit, right? And it makes the bike slower for the start to make it to drive. But when we did start maps, and my brother rode, even back in 08, they had this, like when my brother rode the factory Honda, his was the opposite. We made the bike faster for the start, because it's hard to manage around the whole track. It makes you tired. So it's funny how like somebody like that goes to all the races doesn't, and I don't know that's in everybody's case, but anytime in our case, like in Jim, my brother was a good starter. When he rode 450s, he made us start map faster to get to the first turn, and then would level out, because that's what you got to get you there. So he would do it the opposite is what most people think, because if you dart off the line, right, and your bike's the fastest off the line, it's just some people can't control it, and a lot of times it's littler riders, they can't control the bike off the line. But then, like you said, you're hunkering the freaking front tire all the way down the front fender. Well, I do think you made a good point there. Little twitch, little something, dude, the bike's not meant to handle with no suspension. It's like you're going into the turn with 2x4s under a little load. A little twitch is going to put you on your head.
Exactly. And I will say, like, added to what you were talking about, how the majority of the kids at Loretta can't do a slow wheelie, but with the evolution of technology, these maps are now able to turn from retarding the motor to snapping out before the bike even moves 3 feet in front of you, so that it goes from, all right, here's maximum traction, to I made a video about it with Jet's motorcycle, where you could instantly just hear the bike just switch immediately, just in milliseconds. And those grates, if you take a dirt start and then the metal grate, and you were able to use Dartfish or New Lip Perot's program as well, Vision, and you could see how much faster it was, guarantee you the rider is going quite a bit faster coming off the grate than he is normal dirt. And that's just adding to the first turn with overemphasizing higher speeds mean you're going to have worse crashes, and where if you take away that grate, well, you've got a deep rut that probably has a hole in one of them, or it could be cockeyed. And so now the rider's going to have a different little bit of skill with balance, and the bike isn't going to be connected to the ground 100% because it's going to be chattering off of the line because of the ruts and the holes. And that's where riders really are able to get a wheel on somebody or not. But yeah,
I mean, the gate's about probably 2 inches, right? Now you got this 2-inch grate that puts you on top of it. So the gate's a non-factor. Your tires don't touch the gate anymore. You know what I mean? That thing sits above the gate. So yeah, you're 100% right. You're going so much faster into that first turn because you're not hitting that little curb right off the bat.
Exactly. And which is scary. And my limited testing with coming off the grate, those grates are so scary, because starting on dirt, if you've got really tacky dirt, you'd be like, all right, I'm going to give even more throttle because I'm going to have to break the wheel loose a little bit so I don't wheelie over, because I've got so much traction. But on a grate, it is damn near impossible to break that rear wheel loose, so the only way to really get maximum or to come off faster without wheeling is the timing of the motorcycle. Yeah. And that's what all those ECUs do. So like, I am not going to shut up about it, because I feel like it's such a bad problem with, I hate it. I hate it. It's just my honest opinion. Even in motocross, maybe it helps a little bit because it's so much longer, the starts are twice as long. So a rider is going to be able to catch a little bit different traction, where, because in motocross, there's coming into the first turn, you might have some guy that starts off way on the outside that doesn't have tilled the dirt, where once he's 20 feet ahead, he's going to actually continue to not have to plow through some dirts or ruts and anything in front of him. Where in Supercross, there's very limited differential between the start stretch. In motocross, it's different. So
Yeah, I don't know what a gate looks like nowadays, like behind it. Like on the amateur end, grates are great for me because we have grates and I could teach that. And a lot of places don't, and the kids don't practice it. So for me, grates are awesome for my students because we can put a lot of time into it. But if I was on the pro end, I wouldn't have access to like this, a lot of this stuff that the factories do. So I like it for where I'm at in my lane. But if I was working with pro riders, I would probably not like it because I'm not out, no matter what I do with my facility here, where the sport's going, I'll never be able, I shouldn't say never, but the likelihood of me ever working with a top 5 or 10 out, a pro rider is out because of Star or because of the Baker's factor and kind of how things are going. So if I was working with a pro rider, it would be a disadvantage because I wouldn't have access to what you're talking about. So I do like them for where I'm at because I can teach a technique and not a lot of other people do it. But it's still going to be the same though. Like the double clutching is still going to happen and it's going to get the holes out, right? And the guys that are trying harder, so that the main gates are still going to get rougher. So those outside gates are still going to be better. My brother ripped hole shots coming out of the LCQ. He's got hole shot checks.
great, but what happens when we go electric? There's not going to be no double clutching anymore.
No, and that's funny. And it's funny. I listen to all this stuff too. I do listen to some podcasts and everybody's like, oh, I wish it needs a clutch. It'd be cool if it had a clutch to do. Like that's so backwards. Like I spend all the time getting off clutch. You don't need a clutch on an electric bike because it's all there. Like its power is instant. So it's funny. Like people want this, and I'm like, dude, once you go to electric and you put a rear brake up on the hand to where you don't ever have to move your feet or shift, right? That really puts you off balance. You're having to, you're in this position where you're on the balls of your feet. You're tight. You can bury your heels. You can do whatever you need, and you got like that's such a big movement to go to the shifter, and your knees are falling forward, or go to the rear brake, and everybody's like, dude, I would that it's gonna change everything. If people will be so much faster because you can just plant your feet, stick them where they need to go. Your rear brake's up here, your front brake's up there. You've gotten rid of 3, everything's back in the day. Rob probably remembers it's like master the 5 controls, right? We're getting rid of 3 of them. Or 2 of them. You're getting rid of the shifter, and you can put the rear brake up there. You know what I mean? So like you don't have to move your feet, and you're getting rid of the clutch. So we've gone from having to master 5 controls to having 3 controls and not having to move our feet at all, which is going to be a game changer. So once people figure that out, and I think that's the claim I made. When these go and people start using the rear brake as a hand control, game over.
You make actually a really good point that I'm embarrassed that I didn't even think of that, So thank you, Greg, for the insight there, because it's 1000% accurate. Yeah, no, I believe it because things have changed so much from the God. I'm an idiot. Where a lot of riders, if you look back in the 90s, they would ride kind of on their heels. And then now we've transitioned to the balls of our feet, and it just helps so much. You see a lot of riders standing up, and they're able to stand up in the corners because their knees are pointed inwards. They're not gonna, and they're on their toes, so they don't have to worry about the ruts twisting and tearing their ACLs.
And Coach Rob could probably, say this a lot better than I could. I could kind of lead him, but he's probably got the fancy way to say it. But like at the end of the day, like your feet, we're talking about being on the balls of your feet. And back in the day, you would go to your shifter, your rear brake, and what would you do? You have your foot there so you can get to it easy, right? That's how you learn. Oh, well, I don't have to pull it back. I'm just going to use it when I need it, right? And then you kick your feet out so you wouldn't accidentally hit it. So now we're riding feet out with on our arches of our feet so we can get back. So then we move them here. So it's just less movement because we want to use the controls. And then somewhere down the line, somebody probably like Rob that understands physiologically go, well, it's going to be way better to be, on your toes. But even when we're on our toes, like you're looking, I love like gym workouts, especially for kids, gym technique as far as like a deadlift or a squat, because we know we're driving our weight through our heels. And like I'd say that, but like, oh, we're on the balls of our feet. But even though we're on the balls of our feet, no different than doing a squat or a deadlift, you're driving that weight in your heels. So like you're pushing down through the pegs. And that's, I think people like parents I'll see all the time and coaches, you got to get weight back. So they think you got to stretch and get your weight back here. To weight the rear end, all you have to do is drop your heels. You got to drive your heels. That's what weights the rear end. So you're seeing guys like Kenny and Sexton and Jet. They're not getting so far off the back of the bike like you see like RJ Hampshire does sometimes. They're getting that to the ground by driving the weight down through their heels, even though their heels aren't on anything. But it's the same like I said, Coach Rob would know the terms, but you're driving that weight, through your heels, no different than, squatting,
But then it also
300
makes you
pounds.
susceptible to Achilles tears, somewhat of like what happened to Tomac, is because
Yeah.
now you've got that.
That's crazy G forces those guys are pulling. It's nuts.
Yeah, and if you're on the foot peg with taking away your ankle that moves, well, now the entire leg is taking the majority of the weight. But when you're on your toes like that, a lot of the inertia is isolated in that ankle. And,
Yeah, but
and
if you go all the way back to like Gary Simmick's, those videos in 1991, 2, 3, and then we go over this night. But it's your job to know if you're going to have a hard landing to transition your feet back to the arches of your feet. And I think Tomac is just in the spot where he's probably just driving all that looking for traction. You know what I mean? And that was a freak deal. If he was going to come up short or he thought he was going really long, I'm sure he would move to the arches of their feet. Most of those guys do. I do. I tell those kids. Sometimes you forget to tell the kids, that because it's like, you're saying so much, but yeah, if you're coming up short because you think it's natural, okay, hey, get to the arches of my feet, let this, don't hyperextend there, and they have ankle save, I saw that company had ankle savers for a while, but again, you want that flexion. You don't want to limit your mobility by having ankle savers or stuff. And that's another thing I tell my kids is like, if it's not on the factory bikes, don't put it on your bike. There's a reason this stuff's been tested. So, but yeah, I mean, I think for sure, like, you need that mobility. And as far as Tomac, I think that's just a freak accident. I truly believe if he thought that he was going long, and he didn't go long, he's landing in the pocket.
And what it was almost even like a double. Or no, it was a triple that he was landing
Just
in there. Yeah, and he landed beautifully. It was.
But those guys are pulling so much speed
Oh,
now
he did
because
overjump it briefly.
their suspension's got to be so stiff. Back in the day, they were landing at the top, and driving down the transitions. These kids are going so fast and the suspension's so stiff. They're jumping into the middle of the transitions and they're making so much time doing that. But that stuff's got to be so ridiculously stiff. And I mean, I think, on a normal bike, that bike, if you landed in a pocket like that on a normal suspension, it would blow your hands off the bars. That stuff is so stiff and it just doesn't look that way. So the G forces those guys are pulling, I mean, it's happenstance. I think that was just a bad luck deal. And like I said, Coach Rob's probably got the science behind that, but I don't think he did anything wrong.
Well, Coach, before I go get my daughter, I'll let you respond.
No, I don't want to respond because Greg did a great job of articulating it. What are your picks for the weekend, Johnny?
My picks?
Yeah.
Well, for some reason, I got the Deegan phenomenon because I keep telling confusing Faulkner with Deegan. So in me, I want to say that I would really like to see Max come out and beat everybody, truthfully, just as like an underdog. However, I do think Deegan is going to get it done, and I would like to see Faulkner at least land on the podium and get some forward momentum going, not just have it be a one fluke type of a race. In the 450 class, man, it's hard to tell. I want to see Sexton do well, but I really think his wrist is more hurt than what he's leading on. And man, there's so many good guys between Roxon to Webb to Anderson. I'm going to go with Greg on this one. I think. Now, actually, if I'm really being honest about it, Coach, I'm going to go with you. Jet is going to win, and the podium will say Jet, Anderson, Kenny.
Okay. Do you guys think? Oh, I'm curious. Do you guys think we get any more winners in the 450 class? And if so, how many?
I think Tomac would be the only one that I think has got a win in him.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm
Yes.
at with Jet, or with Jason. I think if it happens for Jason, it happens this weekend and it rolls. And if it doesn't happen for Jason this weekend, I don't think it happens at all. That's where I think we're at with him.
That is an interesting take.
Yeah.
Okay,
and then-
last question before we go. What is going on with Tomac in your opinion, Greg?
I don't think anything, honestly. I mean, that's a big injury. That's a lot of time to spend off the bike. He came into the season last year, off of so much time. He raced all. His intensity stayed up, and he rides alone. I don't think there's any problem with riding alone. It's funny because like you look at his tracks. I got a training facility. You got to ride something rough, but he's always been like at home riding smooth tracks alone, and he's been able to win. I just think I think he's just got a little bit more. I think he's going to get a little bit better, and he's going to have his good races, and he's going to win. I think Tomac will get 2 wins. I think he's going to get a win at Daytona, and I do think he's gonna click one off somewhere else. So I don't think anything's wrong. That's just such a tough injury.
Dude, we're pretty much right on topic. We see a lot of eye to eye here, Greg, and a lot of people in the comments say that you have been their favorite guest for the year. So I do want to thank you for taking the time, even though I think I screwed up some of our emails before because I was supposed to have you on a few weeks ago, but then
Yeah, I mean, I really honestly, I'm glad you caught me now. Sometimes I'm hard to get a hold of. Usually I'm in the equipment. Last night, you caught me on a good one. I'm going down to Dallas. I had that week, so I had last night off. Me and my fiance went and saw a concert last night. I woke up a little hungover and I saw your text, and I was like, oh, thank God I'm doing nothing. So I wasn't ready for it, but I'm glad that you guys were able to have me on, and I'm definitely down to come on anytime.
Yeah,
Awesome.
hell yeah. Well,
Awesome.
as always, everybody, I want you to keep it WFO and make sure that you follow these SOBs in the description below. Greg, can we get you to Brop?
No, well, no, I'm not.
He
I'm not
did.
in the mood for it right now. You got me here, man. I'm looking at my fiance on the couch right now. She's like, "You got to do what?" I'm like, "I got to put a shirt on. I got to do this, and then we got to drive down to Dallas." So I'm excited. I get to go to Dallas, first Supercross of the year. So I'm excited to drive over there, and like I said, hopefully my predictions ring true. You guys went the safe route. I took a swing, so it's always nice when you take a swing.
That's how you influence people, is you have a completely different opinion. What does Mark Twain say? If you find yourself on the side of the majority, you should stop and reflect. So
I mean, if I'm putting my own money on it, I'm probably, I want Jason to do good. And like I said,
you did say Deegan was going to win the 250s.
I do believe that. If somebody, like I said, I'm not a betting man, but if somebody said you have to put $1,000 on each, I'm going to put my money on Deegan, and I'm going to put my money on Jet because I hate to, but I do think I have a feeling about Jason, and you don't bet. I'm not going to bet on a feeling. I would bet on the facts, and the facts say that Jet's probably going to win this weekend. But I'm going to stick with Jason because I think, like I told you, it's going to happen now, and I think he's getting one. So I think it's going to happen now or never.
Heck yeah.
Good
Well,
stuff.
till next time, guys.